Okay, so yeah, my name is Hellina Nigatu. I am a third year, or finishing my third year PhD in computer science at UC Berkeley. My research interest is the intersection of low resource language NLP and HCI. And currently I'm interning at Mohammed bin Zayed University of AI in Abu Dhabi, working with Professor Monojit. I'm excited to be here. Thanks again, Cohere for AI, for inviting me to give this talk. And today I'm going to talk about two research projects that together answer the question, what are the online experiences of low-resourced language speakers? So to give a bit of structure to my talk, we will go through these three broad topics. So I will first start with a background of what low-resourced languages are. So there are several definitions for the term low-resource language. For the purpose of this talk, we will define them as languages with limited available data. In my work and in the second paper that I'll talk about today, we intentionally use the term low-resourced instead of low-resource to emphasize that the low-resourcedness comes from choices in design and development of language technologies that have left some languages, and by extension their communities, behind, while these languages do not innately lack resources. So moving on to our background, the NLP community has been criticized for its hegemony, with the infamous Bender rule highlighting how we have accepted English as the default language to the point that we don't even name it when we are studying English in NLP papers. We also have scholars such as Stephen Bird highlighting the complexity of language ecologies and offering a different framing of thinking about language and resources. We also see progress within the multilingual NLP work with works that critique and probe multilingual language models, participatory and community-oriented projects, for instance, from organizations such as Masakane, and works that explore adoption of pre-trained models with small amounts of data. There are also open source multilingual models, such as the No Languages Left Behind project from Meta, as well as Aya from Cohere for AI. And a common challenge in all of these projects and across low-resourced language NLP is that of data. And this challenge is both in terms of quality and quantity. So this brings us to the first question that we will answer today, which is what makes it challenging to create data in these languages? For this portion of the presentation, I'm going to talk about our project titled Low-Resourced Languages and Online Knowledge Repositories, a Need-Finding Study. This is work done in collaboration with my advisors, Professor John Kenny and Professor Sarah Chasins, and I've presented versions of this talk at various conferences and venues, so if you're interested, you can go check those out, and it's also published in the CHI 2024 proceedings. So as a motivation for this particular project, I'm sure most of you here are aware of Wikipedia. It is a free encyclopedia that is available in over 300 languages and has over 191 million articles in total. And the vision statement for Wikipedia is to be a platform where every single person on the planet is given free access to the sum of all human knowledge. But despite this vision, not all languages on Wikipedia are represented the same. Particularly low-resourced languages lack in terms of quality, in terms of quantity. There are 304 articles on Tigrinya Wikipedia compared to over 650,000 in Arabic. There are also an alarmingly low number of new articles per day and active editor count in low-resourced languages compared to their higher-resourced counterparts. Low-resource language Wikipedias also suffer in terms of quality. The first screenshot that we see here is from the Tigrinya Wikipedia for an article with the title that translates to history, and it's just one word, the name of a person. The second screenshot shows an Amharic Wikipedia article for the title Ethiopian History, which has one long sentence describing the location of a town in the Tigray region. Zooming out, we see that most articles in low-resourced languages have just one sentence indicated by the peak in their respective graphs. Well, for comparison, we observe that Arabic has a peak at around 10 sentences. We also observed that for low-resourced languages, the maximum number of sentences per article is in the tens or hundreds, while for Arabic, it's in the thousands and 10,000s. Low-resource language Wikipedias also suffer from relevance issues. So this is a screenshot of an article on the main page of Amharic Wikipedia at the time of writing this paper, and it is about the Big Mac burger, although there's no McDonald's restaurant in Ethiopia. Well, an article about a famous community in Ethiopia, Auramba, is available in 6 languages, none of which are Ethiopian. So overall, we observed that low-resource language Wikipedia suffer in terms of quantity, quality, and relevance. Hence, we asked the question, what challenges do low-resource language contributors face when interacting with online knowledge repositories? And to answer our research question, we conducted 2 separate studies. In study 1, we collected forum discussion data from 3 low-resource languages Wikipedias and used inductive thematic analysis to understand the challenges discussed by Wikipedia contributors. But since contribution in this space is very low, we conducted a second study, which was a contextual inquiry study with 14 novice contributors to understand the barriers to entry in this space. So I'm going to pause here to tell you the personal motivation for this project. This project started because I wanted to train models for Amharic and Tigrinya, and I tried to use data from Wikipedia, but I found that there were, one, very few articles, and also that most of them had quality issues. And this includes political opinions and content, and also hate speech. So when we started working on the study, we thought, okay, we're going to figure out what's wrong with Wikipedia for these languages. We're going to send recommendations to Wikimedia Foundation. It's going to be fixed, and we're going to have more data. But we were wrong because the barriers in contributing in these languages are due to distinct but interacting challenges that span Wikipedia's interface, of course, but also additional language support tools that contributors use, and social political challenges that are beyond just technology. So let's start with a few challenges in the Wikipedia interface. We observed that Wikipedia interface would sometimes have instructions mixed in local language and English. For instance, in this screenshot with one of our participants, the permission error says you are not allowed to create this page due to the following reasons in Tigrinya, and proceeds to list the reason in English. So if the person is not bilingual or cannot understand English, there's no way that they're going to understand what this notice is telling them. We also observed that users struggled to read and write in non-Latin scripts on Wikipedia's interface. In this dialogue, the designer is responding to complaints that the Amharic font is bold. The designer acknowledges that they cannot read Amharic, but that they say that the font does not come with a bold variant. However, as one user explains, the font appears to be bold and it is distracting. They try to simulate their interaction by explaining how it feels like reading a whole English essay in bold font. Another user explains that the font is difficult to read for small-sized text, like the ones used for an actual article, and that when there are numbers, they appear smaller than the surrounding text. So there's a significant back and forth between the users and the designer before the designer is able to understand what the challenges are, because the designer does not read Amharic in this case. Another challenge that we observed with the Wikipedia interface is that of misspellings and different spellings leading to duplicate articles. In Amharic Wikipedia, this surfaces in the form of several characters that represent the same sound being used to spell the same word in different ways. As one poster complains, there are 182 different ways of writing Atse Haile Selassie, which is the name of one of the Ethiopian kings. And in Afan Oromo, we see this manifest in terms of different spellings that might be different due to differences across dialects, or entire misspellings that lead to duplicate articles. And this leads to users not being able to find articles when they search, and wastes editors' time trying to identify and remove duplicate articles once they've been created. So now we're going to move on to challenges with language support tools. We observed several challenges with users trying to write articles in non-Latin script. In this screenshot, one of our participants is using an Amharic keyboard on his phone to write an Amharic article. He switches his keyboard to English in order to write an English word in parentheses, but then he forgets to switch his keyboard back to Ge'ez, or the Amharic keyboard, and proceeds to write Amharic with Latin characters. When he realizes what he is doing, he erases the Amharic text with Latin characters, switches his keyboard back, and writes with Ge'ez letters. The second language support tool we'll highlight is machine translation. So here we show a screenshot of one of our participants using Google Translate to translate a paragraph about a Muslim Ethiopian ruler into Amharic. There are a few errors in this translation, but I'll highlight two of them. So first, we note that the translation simply copies over the year that the ruler came into power without indicating what calendar system it is in or doing a conversion. And without the context that this came from an English text or indication of the calendar system, the Amharic text might be off by about 7 years, since the default when you're reading an Amharic text might be the Ethiopian calendar. Second, the translation for Mahfuz, who wedded his daughter to him, was literally translated to the ruler marrying his own daughter, a mistranslation that our participant indicated fearing would have even more negative connotations, considering that the ruler is Muslim. Finally, let's talk about social-political issues. We observed a set of social-political challenges, from financial barriers to issues with accessing and finding scholarly resources. In our contextual inquiry study, we observed that resources pertaining to the communities our participants wanted to write about were not available. Here, one participant exclaims, "We have nothing. See, we don't even have suggestions," after attempting to edit articles related to African leaders in Tigrinya Wikipedia and being told that there are no suggestions for that category. Or in other cases, the resources exist, but are not in the local language and are usually written by Western scholars, mostly having roots set in colonial viewpoints. "See, it's the heralds of the world," exclaimed one participant as she was scrolling down the list of references in a Wikipedia article about an Ethiopian king. And related to the availability of resources is the challenge our participants face when trying to find resources in their local language. Here, one participant is trying to edit an article on Amharic Wikipedia. This is the screenshot that we saw earlier. So the title here translates to Ethiopian history, and there's a single long sentence about a town called Sazat in the Tigray region of the country. So this participant is trying to enrich information about this town in this particular article. So he first searched on Google the name of the town in Amharic, followed by the English name of the town and the region that it is in. So Google's top result was a news article about the war in Tigray region, and the People's Also Asked section included questions related to the war. What is not in the top result is the name of the town the participant is searching for. Next, the participant removed the English description and only searched for the name of the town in Amharic. Now the top result is a YouTube video with a description that has a word that is spelled similarly to the word to the name of the town, but has entirely different meaning. The YouTube video description translates to "A wife who appeals to me when I look at her and obeys my order." Next, the participant searched for the name of the town, followed by the region and direction of the town, all in Amharic, and he got a no results found page. Then he copied over a description from the Wikipedia article that he was trying to edit. He again got a no results found page. At this point, this participant gave up and changed the topic of his article. A third sub-theme in relation to resources is financial barriers to publishing and accessing scholarly work by and about the communities. As one participant who is a lecturer at an Ethiopian university pointed out, there are books and resources that they cannot access due to paywalls. So I'm going to summarize our findings for the study with this timeline of one of our participants. So this participant is trying to create an account on Tigrinya Wikipedia, but he finds out that his keyboard is not working. He still creates an account with the Latin keyboard, and he is faced with, he follows a link to a page that does not exist. So now when he's trying to edit, he's again told that his keyboard is not working, so he has to restart his computer before he can use his keyboard. So that takes a significant amount of time before he can log back in and get on the main page of Wikipedia. And at this point, he is told that his IP address is blocked. He realizes that this is because he's connected to a VPN service. So he disconnects from the VPN, which in turn disconnects him from the internet. And then he reconnects back to the internet and follows a link to a stub or an article that only has a title in like one word. He tries to edit and he's again told that his IP address is blocked. So he decides he's going to write the article on Microsoft Word and copy it back. He writes his article, tries to copy back, and again is told that his IP address is blocked. So throughout the session, this participant struggled with getting his keyboard to work on the Wikipedia interface, which is related to the language support tools issues we've discussed, was stuck trying to edit stubs and links to pages that do not exist on Wikipedia, and had problems with the Wikipedia cybersecurity flags leading to IP blocked notices. Which leads us to the third set of challenges, which are the social political challenges. The IP was blocked because he was using VPN, but he was using VPN because at the time we were conducting this session, platforms such as YouTube and Telegram were blocked in Ethiopia and due to political issues, and he was trying to navigate like accessing those platforms. So that brings us full circle to the social political challenges that editors face when trying to edit in these languages. And with all these interacting challenges, this participant was also not able to complete his article in this session. So based on our findings, we provide a set of design opportunities. For Wikipedia's interface, we recommend adding features that require editors to specify the dialect that they're writing in, making it more explicit and avoiding duplicate articles due to different spellings, for instance. We also recommend the use of language ID tools to flag to editors articles and notifications that are in mixed languages, as we've seen earlier in this talk. There's also opportunity to provide recommendations to editors based on articles in other language Wikipedias that are about the community. We observed one contributor, for instance, in the Amharic Wikipedia, who did not speak Amharic, but supported the Wikipedia by bringing articles from English Wikipedia that are about Ethiopia and asking others to either translate or create a new article with that topic. So there's opportunity here to augment this with automated recommendation systems. For language support tools, we observe space for human-centered machine translation that, for example, make it explicit where there are entities like names and dates that are being translated, allowing for humans to check those translations more thoroughly. We also recommend using methods like back translation to flag critical mistranslations and explicitly studying and thinking about how gender is represented in different languages and incorporating that in how we build and train our models. One more technology that I will highlight is the opportunity for multimodal inputs. Based on the challenges for keyboards, there is room for automated speech recognition systems as input modalities. Additionally, multimodal interaction with voice would also allow for preserving knowledge that is transferred through oral traditions, which is very common practice for low-resourced languages. So in this presentation, we've covered the challenges that low-resource language speakers face when trying to write articles in their languages. I would like to add to this talk a question that we had really thought about a lot while working on this project, which is, what if the reason that these languages do not have data available on Wikipedia or even the internet more generally is because they simply do not want their data there? And this is especially crucial question to reflect on, as the knowledge of these communities has historically been exploited throughout the years. We argue in this work that it should be the choice of the community and not our design shortcomings that make this decision for them. Our work shows that even when community members want to write in their languages, several interacting challenges prevent them from doing so. I will wrap up this portion of the talk with a quote from Ruha Benjamin: "Technology succeeds by excluding some groups from taking part in its design, intent, and implementation and results." And I will again iterate on the question, why should we care if it is challenging? So we argue that we should care because we use this data to train our models and have these speakers directly interact with our models. And when we have data with quality issues, we'll have models with quality issues. When we have data with relevance issues, we'll have models with relevance issues, and so on. So this is a good segue to the second portion of this talk, where I'll try to answer one of the main reasons why we should care. Why does it matter that there are understudied languages beyond the research gap, or what is the direct consequence of this research gap? For the second portion, I'm going to talk about a project investigating online harm due to policy violating sexual content on YouTube. This is work done in collaboration with Deb Raji, also from UC Berkeley. So I will start with a trigger warning that this presentation contains discussion of not safe for work content, including sexual content that some may find disturbing. So I'll just put that out there in case you need to you need to step away. So I'll start with some background on social media platforms such as YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, which are used by millions of people across the globe. These platforms have become the go-to for entertainment, education, and even social activism and organizing. And while these platforms provide benefits to their users, they are also a playground for online harm and abuse. So narrowing in on YouTube, according to the Mozilla Foundation's YouTube Regret Reports, although the platform derives an estimated 700 million hours of watch time every single day, we know very little about how it works. In 2019, research showed that majority of the content on YouTube was created in languages other than English. However, non-English speakers are affected the most by exposure to content that they, quote, regret, indicating a disparity in moderation and content depending on the language of use. To give a bit of background on how YouTube does content moderation, let's look at some of the reported mechanisms from the recently released Google Transparency Report. According to the GTR, 91.3% of the content flagged for moderation is, quote, self-detected. That is, it is identified proactively by the platform through processes than by reports from users or other external means. Further, the report states that the majority of violating content is detected by automated systems and sent to human reviewers afterwards. I want to pause here and stress this point. All the gap that we talked about up to this point and the lack and failure of tools come into play here as automated systems are being used to protect users. But in the context of low resource language speakers, those systems don't work very well or maybe don't even exist. Translation tools might be used in the review process, for example, when the content assigned to a reviewer is in multiple languages, which again brings us to the translation system failures we covered in the first portion of this talk that in this context are being used to, again, protect users. And despite the majority of the content being in non-English languages, 89.2% of the human moderators operate in English. From the remaining non-English moderators, only 2.1% of them operate in languages other than the highly resourced European ones. Hence, low-resourced language moderation is low, both in human and automated efforts, which is why, again, we intentionally use the word low-resourced, because there are decisions in policy and design leading to direct harm that we will discuss in the remainder of this talk. So despite the guardrails imposed by platform policies, low-resource language speakers are exposed to and impacted by policy-violating content on platforms such as YouTube. So we set out to answer two research questions. First, we wanted to understand the experience and coping mechanisms of users exposed to policy-violating sexual content on YouTube in a low-resource language. And second, we wanted to contextualize the user experience by investigating what characteristics such type of policy violating content has on the platform. To answer these questions, we conducted two studies. In study one, we conducted qualitative interviews with Ethiopian women with diverse backgrounds who have been exposed to policy violating sexual content when using the platform in Amharic. We included participants both within the country and in the diaspora. In study two, we collected data directly from the platform. We curated a list of about 30 popular and benign search terms in Amharic, including names of TV shows and celebrity names, and used the YouTube API to collect search results. For policy-violating sexual videos that were returned by the platform, we collected the recommended videos intentionally snowballing by opening sexual videos in the recommendations. We use this method because our goal was to understand what characteristics of such content is and not to quantify the degree at which it happens. We then identified channels that posted policy violating sexual content from our search and recommendation results to understand the strategies they use to circumvent platform policies. Finally, from the most viewed policy violating channel, which I will add is actually verified by YouTube, we collected comments for 3 of the most viewed videos. Our findings can be broadly summarized as follows. First, YouTube's content moderation, both automated and manual, is under-resourced for low-resourced languages. Second, malicious content creators take advantage of the low quality of moderation in low-resource languages in order to hijack benign search terms with content violating the platform policies. Low-resource language-speaking women from diverse socioeconomic standing, including migrant domestic workers and minors, are exposed and impacted by such content. So let's dig deeper into the first finding. In our analysis of search and recommendation results, we find that benign terms such as doctor or names of TV shows return sexually explicit content that violates the platform policy. In the first screenshot, we see the fifth search result, which is highlighted in a red box, being a sexually explicit policy-violating video for the search term doctor in Amharic. Policy-violating videos are further diffused by YouTube recommendation algorithm. In Figure B, we see screenshots of the recommendation to a policy-violating sexual video. The recommendations include sexual videos in other languages, which are highlighted in teal, sexual scenes cut from movies, highlighted in pink, and other sexual videos in Amharic from other channels, highlighted in yellow, all violating the platform policy. In our interview study, our participants reported their search experience for Amharic was, quote, horrible, requires a lot of scrolling, contains a lot of unrelated content, and is full of clickbaits and tabloids. Benign search terms, including religious content, return sexual videos. As P3 expressed in the quote shown, I searched for a religious song in Amharic and got sexual content instead. Participants also felt that the platform policy was not reflective of their cultural and moral backgrounds and expressed not feeling prioritized. As participant 14 stated, I think they only take their own way of defining what is right. I do not think what I feel matters. So for finding 2, we identified 8 key strategies that malicious content creators use to circumvent platform policies and spread policy violating content in these languages. In this redacted example, we show a video from a channel that uses 7 out of 8 of these strategies. The channel uses benign hashtags such as hashtag Ethiopian News to manipulate SEO, presents as a doctor masquerading as an authoritative figure with credentials, had a video post that used explicit Amharic writing next to a stock image of a woman, shows a video with benign content unrelated to the explicit Amharic audio, uses English content as a disguise, as can be seen in the channel description, which was originally posted in English, and describes the channel content as providing healthcare and skincare routine tips, while the video title and the video description, which were originally posted in Amharic, are sexually explicit and uncensored. The channel also cross-references similar channels in the hashtags and shares their contact information, such as phone number and Telegram username. One strategy not observed for this particular video in this particular channel, but is broadly utilized by other malicious actors, is that of lexical variation, which refers to the intentional misspelling or distortion of text, for instance, by misspelling it or using emojis, while the word still conveys the same meaning. In the context of our study, we observed that channels mix Latin and Ge'ez characters with similar phonetics so that the word is spelled in a combination, but the meaning and the sound of the full word are the same. Finally, coming to our last finding on who is most impacted by the content, through our inductive analysis of comments, we found 3 high-level themes. The first is interaction among commenters, which includes posts that have, for example, offers for access to abortion pills, We observed direct engagement with the content, including indications of believing the presented credentials by malicious content creators. So in this example, the person is referring to the content creator as a doctor, although there's no proof of that credential other than the person saying that they're a doctor. And the third sub-theme was opinions about the content, including comments against the spread of such type of content. We also observed that from the users that disclosed their location in the comments, about half of them indicated being located in the Middle East or used identifiers associated with migrant domestic workers. All of these quotes that you see on the screen were originally in Amharic and were translated to English afterwards. We looked at the platform policies and listed out evidence from both our studies that show how these policies are violated in the context of our study. In addition to degrading and harassing content targeted towards Ethiopian women, our findings indicate that minors are exposed to such content and in some cases are filmed without their consent. We also found videos of sexual abuse and rape, including migrant domestic workers recording abuse that they go through at the hands of their employers. Based on our findings, we give the following recommendations. For technologists, we recommend designing with the diverse socioeconomic backgrounds of their users in mind. Even within the low-resource language speaking community, circumstances and experiences of users vary depending on their social context. We also recommend that platforms understand and mitigate where their policies fall short and are circumvented by malicious content creators in low-resource languages. We suggest studying underperformance of moderation efforts in context to get a better understanding of the diverse ways policies fail across cultures, communities, and languages, allowing platforms to better implement policies that take this diversity into account. As policy recommendations, we suggest allocating funds for NGOs that support women from low-resource language-speaking countries to provide trainings to combat and deal with online harm. We also recommend government bodies to set up oversight agencies that require platforms to demonstrate and disclose how their policies account for the languages of the countries that they're operating in. I will end this part of the talk here by quoting from the Google Transparency Report itself, that every user should have positive experience on online platforms, no matter where they are located. I'll also add that users should be protected from policy violating content, regardless of the language that they use the platform in. I will conclude my talk here by reminding us that the experience of low-resource language speakers are at the intersection of social, political, design, and technological decisions, and excluding communities from our research and solutions leads to direct harm. I encourage you to visit my website to access both papers, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Hellina.
Thank you.
All right, so if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask. Yeah, Tom, you can go ahead.
Hi, Hellina. Thank you very much for the informative talk. Learned a lot of information. I had a question about the design opportunities section where you recommended the addition of lang ID when editing articles. Do you have a particular solution in mind for that, considering that there are significant shortcomings for low resource languages with most of the mainstream lang ID tools?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are a few that I'm aware of. I'll try to put them in the chat specifically for African languages, because that is like my focus area. I know that there's one specifically for GIIS-based languages, like the Ethiopian languages that use the GIIS script, but there's also one for generally like African languages as a whole as well. So there are like a few efforts, especially that come out of Masakane, and I might be biased because I'm in Masakane, but there are a few efforts going on there in terms of language identification as well. But like another I guess nuance in that suggestion or that recommendation is that sometimes editors might want the article to be in a mixed language, right? Like, for example, if they're like comparing cognates across languages or comparing like different sayings across languages, then automatically flagging all of that like might make it a little bit difficult to track things, or automatically like taking down articles that are in mixed languages where these type of errors are also likely to occur, might make it difficult to sustain like Wikipedias for these languages. So we put that nuance in the paper, but I also like just want to say that here that sometimes editors might want articles in mixed languages, but we should leave the final decision for them to be able to decide if they're going to keep it or edit.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I'll look for those papers. But happy to take other questions in the meantime.
Maybe I can ask something that was in my mind. In what ways, maybe like give us a typical scenario, like in what ways do content creators use maybe like conservative cultural norms to justify the release of these harmful videos or like contents in general?
That is a great question. And that's actually something that we observed a lot, especially in comments. Like if, for example, it was like non-consensual sexual video released of somebody, or there were a few channels that actually did like, I think in the paper we framed them as like expose, like they will like track down people and record them, like kind of like catch people in the act type of thing. Usually those channels are commissioned, like they're paid by somebody to go and track this other person, but they'd still be posting like policy violating content, right? And in those cases, like because most of the people that are being targeted are women, in the comments you just have like justifications. She should not have dressed that way. She should not have put herself in the situation. Like religion and culture are used like very aggressively in trying to justify these things. But we also see that like in the reverse of like people who are against such type of content. Again, in our analysis of the comments, there were people who were pushing back saying like, this is like Ethiopia is a conservative country. Ethiopia is like our religion does not allow any of this. You should not be posting these type of things, etc. And this is usually targeted towards the content creators that pose as doctors or like as providing educational material when it's just explicit sexual content that they're putting out. So like there will be pushback against that using culture again as a way to say like this is not who we are, or like this does not represent our country. Another like flip also that we've seen is that like there were a lot of pushback in terms of like children being exposed to such type of content. I've mentioned like in the talk that there were minors who said that they were exposed, right? Like I'm 16 years old and I'm seeing this video and stuff like that. There were disclosures like that indicated minors being exposed. There were minors who were being filmed without their consent. But there were also comments that were pushing back against this type of content, saying that you're ruining the generation, you're ruining kids. Especially, I think there was more, like there were more concerns around like minors being exposed to such type of content. So that was another flip that we observed.
Yeah, thanks. I can add one more. So like this one is maybe specific to YouTube. So in terms of the recommendation systems they use, how much of the geographical location matter when you're, I don't know, like browsing similar contents? For example, like, let's say Amharic contents, but like different geographical locations. Yeah.
So in our study, we tried 5 different locations because the initial analysis showed like there were people that were like, there was content that was coming out of the Middle East. There was content that was coming out of like Western countries. But the Western countries, it was more of like the channels would have their location set in the US or like set in the UK. But it would but the content was still being filmed in Ethiopia. But in the comments, we also observed that there were a lot of people interacting that indicated being located in the Middle East, and obviously the local geographical context as well. What we observed is that for recommendations, like when the location is set to Ethiopia, we got a lot more sexual videos recommended for every sexual video that we opened. I can't make like conclusive claims because again, like the way that we did it was intentionally looking for sexual videos in some cases because we were interested in like the characteristics of, right, rather than like quantifying to what degree it happens. But still, like same process, but Ethiopia had the highest recommendation for sexual videos. And what else did we observe? I think in the US, I think like in the Western countries, we saw a lot more with queries that had like celebrity names or like TV show names and stuff like that would return sexual content. But yeah, there were like a few disparities like that.
Thanks.
Yeah. Sending like the language ID things that like papers. So I've sent 2 of them in the chat that I am aware of, but I'm sure there are more. Yeah, I'm also happy to like bring back the slides if anybody wants me to like go to a specific slide. Right?
I also got one question. Yeah. So I don't know if you noticed, but one of the challenges of collecting open source data in low resource languages is that there might be speakers, there might be contributors, but they're not willing to contribute much. So, in the Western culture, like in the US, they do, swag drops, stuff like that. But like I don't know, to increase the open source contribution, what are the things that motivate people to contribute a lot? Because this was one of the issues we had with the IA data collection with Cohere, specifically for Amharic.
Yeah, I think so. There are like, okay, I'll mention like one challenge that we found in like the forum analysis for Amharic Wikipedia, I believe. There were people who were mentioned. I remember this one person who mentioned, I don't have like mobile data, like money to buy mobile data, so I can't contribute. Like I can't connect to the internet. So I think like in the Western countries, like when people do like open source or like free labor, there are a lot of other things that are already taken care of for them, right? Versus in these communities, like asking to produce data, like it's a very different ask, right? Like when you're asking for free data. And then there's also the issue of like you're gonna then like take that data, build your model, you're gonna be making money from that data, but then what happens to me? So there's like that as at a like social political level. I know that I work a little bit with this organization called Whose Knowledge. I'll drop their link in the chat. We're thinking about like, okay, how can we pay people, but in a like, in an ethical way, like still make sure that they're taken care of, and that they, like if they want to contribute, they can. So there are like, there's that complexity there. But in my case, with my participants, most of them were not like aware the degree at which there was lack of content or there was quality, like lack of quality in the content that is available. So I know that a few of my participants like went and edited additional articles after doing the sessions, and constantly like, reach out to say like, oh, I did this, like I edited this and stuff like that. So sometimes it's just awareness, like not finding the right people, but sometimes it is because like you cannot ask for free labor and expect like the same response from somebody in the West and somebody in like the global majority communities.
Awesome. Yeah, Tom, go ahead.
Sorry to shoehorn in another question here. It's a super difficult one. Sorry.
Okay, no worries.
Do you have a definition of quality in the data sense? So this is like a really tricky thing to answer. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. It is a very difficult question, right? Because there are so many different axes that you could explore. I think in this work, we were particularly like relying on the Wikipedia policy of what is allowed and what is not allowed. And also like, that's why we separated out relevance, because like an article can be like good quality in terms of the Wikipedia standards, but it might still be irrelevant to the community, or less relevant. I don't want to say irrelevant, but like less relevant to the community that speaks that language. But in terms of like the ways we tried to quantify it, one was like hate speech is not allowed, political content is not allowed. You need to cite your sources, which is like a whole issue by itself, which we talk about in the paper as well. But like there were like a set of guidelines that we relied on, and every platform will have like something different. So it's hard to, yeah, that was like a non-answer to say it's a very, I agree that it's a very difficult question. But yeah, in our work, that's how we did it.
They're good answers. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah. If there aren't any, I mean, people can ask questions, but I just wanted to like share my screen again to shout out a few community like research that goes on in this space. Okay, wait, give me 1 second to figure this out. Okay, there we go. Am I sharing my screen? No? Yes? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to like highlight a few like, because we tend to say, and I'm guilty of this as well, like we tend to say there's no work done in this space, there's like nobody looking at this and stuff like that. But there are like community efforts at these type of things. So this is like an organization called Engalinga Besidet. They are a group of domestic migrant workers in Lebanon that like do amazing work, including research, including advocacy, including like training for migrant domestic workers and their rights. This is an article from like 2023 by this person who's a journalist called Hermes Mulugeta. He actually, so if you read the full article, he actually went and talked to these people that I mentioned earlier who like do expose videos. So he asked them like, why do you target more women? Why do you like he did like undercover investigation type of thing. And their response was like, oh, it's not like our target is not gendered. We work for whoever pays us. It's just that our customers tend to be men. So this is also an interesting read. And there's also this recent report that came out from the Center for Information Resilience in collaboration with the Ethiopian Women Rights Defenders Coalition, which is like a group of women rights organizations in Ethiopia that specifically focused on Facebook, Telegram, and Twitter, or X, I guess now. And yeah, like they looked at the facilitation of technology facilitated gender-based violence in Ethiopia on these platforms, and they have like just a ton of policy recommendations, advocacy research, and all of that. So I just wanted to put all of those out there for anyone who's like interested in following up. Okay, if not, Henny, can we close
Yeah,
out the
yeah.
session?
Yeah, thanks for your time and for coming to be our guest in such a short notice. So
Of
yeah,
course.
hopefully this will not be the last time.
Yeah, I hope not. Yeah, thank you so much for inviting
Yeah.
me, and thank you everyone
Awesome.
for
Thanks everybody
attending.
for joining, and make sure to join our Discord server. Yeah, and I think I'm gonna invite Hellina too, so you can have more chats there.
Sounds good.
All right,
Bye,
awesome. Thanks everybody.